We've probably all taken surveys where some of the questions were misleading or unclear. And in this video, I want to talk about three particular types of misleading survey questions that you definitely want to avoid. Double-barreled questions, leading questions, and loaded questions. Let's start with the first of those, the double-barreled question. So as the term implies, a double-barreled question is a question that's really two separate questions in one. So you're combining two questions into a single question, and that is a big problem. Let's look at an example of that. Let's say this was a statement that is posed to the respondents for your survey. Communication students should be required to take theory and research methods courses. And then you give them options ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So that would be a Likert scale question, right? Remember, this is the classic Likert scale. Now, the problem with this question and the use of the word "and" in the question or in the statement is a telltale sign of this, is that it's really two separate questions, one about theory courses and one about research methods courses. Because if I were taking the survey, maybe I believe that communication students should be required to take the theory courses, but I also believe that they should not be required to take research methods courses. So how would I answer this question? What am I supposed to do? Because I really have two separate responses to it. Should I average out those two responses? I don't know. That's a problem. So the easy fix, of course, would be to split it up into two separate questions. One question about the theory courses and one about the research methods courses. Now, yes, this makes your survey longer, and it also does make your survey seem maybe a little repetitive to some people. A common complaint about surveys is, boy, it sure seemed repetitive. It was like they kept asking me the same question over and over again. Well, there probably were some subtle differences, and they had to break out those subtle differences into separate questions, as is the case here. So it's better to have a lot of questions than it is to try to combine questions together, because then you run the risk of creating those double-barreled questions. And remember that the tip-off is if you see the word "and." If you find yourself writing a survey question and you find yourself wanting to use the word "and," stop and ask yourself, is this a double-barreled question? And if it is, see if you can split it up into two separate questions. Okay, the second type of misleading question is the leading question. Questions that suggest a good or a right answer. So you often hear about leading questions in a legal context, in a courtroom. If you've watched courtroom dramas, the attorney may try to slip in a leading question, like you intended to assault the suspect or the victim, right? You were in Los Angeles on Tuesday, September 4th, right? Where you are suggesting the answer to them. So you don't want to suggest the right answer or a good answer. You want to make sure that the question is phrased neutrally enough that it does not automatically suggest a particular response. So let's look at an example of a leading question. Let's say you pose this kind of a question: will you fulfill your civic duty by voting in the upcoming election? Well, the way that's phrased, everyone would want to answer yes, because they wouldn't want to admit that they are reneging on their duty as an American citizen, right? So it suggests that the correct answer to this question is yes, because if you answer no, it seems to imply that you're not living up to your duty as a US citizen. So that would be a leading question. Easy fix, of course, would be to take out that leading language and just phrase it in a much more neutral manner that gets at what it is you're really trying to find out. All you're really trying to find out is, do you plan to vote in the upcoming election? Yes or no? So now it is no longer a leading question because it doesn't suggest that either of those two options is better or more correct than the other. The third type of misleading question is the loaded question. So loaded means that the question is loaded up with something. It is loaded up with an assumption or assumptions that may or may not be true. So a loaded question is a little different from a leading question. A leading question suggests a right answer. A loaded question is a question that contains a built-in assumption that assumes something that may not in fact be the case. Let's look at an example. Let's say you ask this question on a survey: how has social media benefited your company? And you give them different options to choose from. What's the problem here? Well, the problem is you are assuming that social media has indeed benefited their company. And you're forcing them to choose one or more of the ways in which that has been the case. Maybe social media hasn't benefited the company at all. Maybe social media has actually hurt the company in a lot of ways. So this question has a built-in assumption that social media has been a benefit to the company. And therefore, it is no good. It is a loaded question. Let's look at one more example. What do you dislike about Facebook? And you've got the options there, 4 options to be exact. What's the problem here? Well, the question assumes that they do dislike Facebook. Maybe they don't dislike anything at all about Facebook. They think Facebook is awesome. So once again, you are making assumptions about the people that you are surveying. So to avoid these loaded questions, it would be a little bit more complicated. There's not an easy fix to these examples. You might want to start out by asking a question about, how much you like or dislike Facebook. And then if they indicate that they mostly like Facebook, then follow up with questions about what it is they like about it. Whereas if they say they mostly dislike Facebook, follow up with a separate question or set of questions about the features that they dislike. But you just want to make sure that you're not making assumptions in the questions that you ask. So double-barreled questions, leading questions, and loaded questions are all bad questions, and you want to make sure that you don't include any of those kinds of questions on a survey.